Look around stuff. I'm going to have a video about how to recharge Ivation 50 pint dehumidifier. And this is sliced together out of various chunks I use this phone to record, and hopefully it'll tie together properly. If you're thinking about doing a dehumidifier recharge, there are a lot of YouTube videos about it. People do it pretty much all the same way, but sometimes they leave out some little details, like I probably will. And also, I see a lot where the dehumidifier requires R410a, but that's expensive, and so they opt to go with what's used in automobiles, which is R134a, because you can get a can for that for $20, $30, $40. And they use that instead, and they claim it works okay. And maybe that is true. In general, you're only supposed to use the refrigerant that's called for by the system, and you're also not supposed to mix them. So I did contemplate following what other people have done with 134A, and I thought better of it. I did buy a can of 134A because they do have automobiles that will go into. But then I thought better about it, and no, I'll go ahead and take a chance. And bought a can, 24 ounces of R410A, and I have used that to recharge. Actually, have two of the Ivation 50 pint dehumidifiers with pumps. So what I'm going to show you is how I did it, and then I'll have an ending piece. Hopefully this will give you some idea, and I'll, again, look at some other videos first, and because I missed something or they missed something, and a couple of them will help you get a better handle on what you have to do. Okay, episode 9, Iran stuff, part 1. And what you're looking at is Ivation 50 pint dehumidifier with pump, and there is the model number. And it also shows you the design pressures on the high and low side of the compressor, okay? Now what I've done is, because this guy had stopped dehumidifying, I don't like throwing things away, I called up, because I had bought it off Amazon, I called up and said, hey, it's not working anymore, and so they sent me a new one under warranty, which is great, and then it's working in the other room. This one ran for about a year before it stopped dehumidifying, okay? So, again, same old thing. I don't want to add to the landfill, so I take the back off and I start looking at it, and you can see there's circuit boards here and what's called a run capacitor, which helps the compressor right here start, and this fan up here run, okay? So I plugged it in and let it run while I had to back off, and the compressor right here would get hot. But this line coming out of here it wasn't cold or hot, and this line here didn't have any either. Okay, just basic stuff. How these things sort of work, and air conditioning in general, you have a compressor, and what it does is it takes in gas, okay, and that comes in on this line, it comes down and comes into the bottom of the compressor, and it's compressed and sent out this line, which goes up all the way to the top into a set of coils that you can't see back in there, back way in there. And this fan then right here blows air across those coils. The coils get cool. The fan blows across it, and maybe the air gets to be like 40 degrees or something. And moisture in the air collects on the coils, drips down to a pan, which come out, and actually this one has a pump on it, so it pumps it away. Okay, so with the back off, okay, I plugged it in and started it up, and it fan runs. So I put my hand on the compressor, and I can feel it running, I hear it running, but nothing's happening. No cool air, if you will. Nothing coming out of the top. No air at all. Okay, so I let it run for a while and it starts getting hot. And I unplug it and let it cool off and I try again, whatever. Okay, nothing's happening. So I suspect that I'm low on the coolant. Okay, so I turn on the compressor again, turn on the unit, and I let it run. I let it run and let it run, let it run. So it gets really, really hot. And up here on top, as you can see, is where it's electrically wired. And there's 3 wires up there. And a little doodad on the top not only supplies power to the compressor, it also is a thermal cutoff switch, which it says right on here somewhere, if I can get close enough. There's the model number of the compressor. There's the freon the coolant it needs, and it says thermally protected. Okay, so I let it run long enough. It got so hot that it popped the thermal protection at the top, and now the compressor doesn't run anymore. Okay, no good. So if I hope to do something with this, I got to get the compressor going again. So I take a can of compressed air, turn it upside down, and I spray. If you've ever turned a can of compressed air upside down, you know it gets really cold. So I sprayed this whole area really with the cold air out of a compressed air can and let it set, made sure it all dried off, and plugged it in, and the compressor came back to life. That's like a one-shot. Now, I did send an email to the company that makes these things, which is down here in this corner, www whatever. They make all these things, and Ivation just sticks their name on it, that's all. This humidifier's probably got 17 different labels that you can buy it under, but they're all made by the same Chinese company. Okay, so I sent them an email. I say, how do I get the thermal switch to do that? They didn't respond. That's why I used the coolant. So now I know that the compressor will run. It's not been destroyed, I hope. But I'm low on coolant because I'm not getting... This thing just gets hotter, shuts itself off because it's not anything to cool in these lines. So what I'm going to have to do in part 2 is I'll buy some connectors that go on this line and this line right here. And once they're installed, I'll be able to put a HVAC gauge set on them and look at the pressure on the what's called the high side and the low side. This is high because it's liquid, and this is low pressure side because it's gas. Okay, and I'm going to put connector on either one of these things, see what the pressure is, and then my particular gauge allows me to fill it with the gas. And I'm going to buy a can of R410a, which you can buy. It is not the same refrigerant that's used in automobiles or in your home system, your HVAC system. I don't think 410A is used in those. It's something else. There's a lot of different refrigerants. But you can buy a can of this. It's like $60. The connectors here are like $10, $15 for 2 of them. This will be easy to connect because it's totally clean and everything. This one down here, I'll have to take some of this off and then clean it to be able to put a connector on it that won't leak. But that's not a biggie. So once I have those on, I'll be able to look at the pressure and I'll be able to add coolant to it. Hopefully I'll take care of it. Now, this is a typical sealed unit. It's not meant to be serviced, or would have service ports on it that you could put gauges on. This is typical for like room air conditioners, dehumidifiers, things like that. So when they don't cool anymore, you pull them out and you throw them in the trash. No. And this one I'm going to attempt to repair. Now, the can and the connectors probably cost $80. This particular guy here, I think it's around $200 to $300 to buy one of these things. And I'm not throwing it away. I'm going to see if I can get it to go. So I'm going to throw good money after bad, probably, and put in try to put some coolant in it and see if I can go. Now, why it's leaking, I don't know. Or maybe for not, it might work for a while and leak again. They do sell what's called a sealant that you can try to put in air conditioning units. I may try that. They sell it for cars and stuff like that, and I may try that. But anyway, this is part one, and this will be future part two where I actually put on the components and try the coolant. That's enough for today. This is Uncle Ron and Stuff Dehumidifier part one. Okay, here we have the Ivation open, and what I'm going to show you is this is the high pressure line, the smaller of the two. The compressor takes in, this is the suction line right here, which goes and wraps around and makes a big U-turn here and comes up this way and goes up to the coils, and this is the return or suction line. Now what I've done here, again, there's no taps anywhere to add any refrigerant anywhere. So what I've done is I've stripped off some insulation right here, and I have bought a kit of taps. This is what it looks like apart, and I'm gonna put this on like right here. I'm gonna mount it. It comes with the back plate and this plate, and right here in the center here, this guy, it actually has a piercing needle which comes up, is gonna pierce this line and give me access to the port. This particular set I bought, it came with two, and this is the other one. And what I liked about this particular set, it has a quick disconnect adapter. Like with cars and so on, they use a quick disconnect fill. You pop the fill cap on this, and that's how you add Freon or refrigerant. So this comes with that. My original thought was that perhaps, if you see right here, this says R410a. Okay, so R410a is kind of expensive. It's like $140 with sealant and dye to go into this thing. I was originally thinking, and I've seen people use R410a, which is the refrigerant used in automobiles, or most of them. And I thought, okay, I'll add this tap right here. I'll take a look at, put my gauge on it and see if there's any refrigerant in it at all. Actually, this is the side. You see where the port is here. I'm going to mount it so the port kind of sticks out this way, and I think it'll clear the chassis and everything. Actually, I'm not sure. It may have to go around like this to properly clear. That may do it. It makes it hard to set the tap. But anyway, I have to allow clearance for the back cover to go on with this installed, and I don't think it'll work like this. It'll have to be in some other orientation. But anyway, I'm going to clean up this piece of copper tubing, and this is the suction or low pressure side. I'm going to put this on. I have gauge that I'm going to put on. I'm going to start everything up and see what the pressure is. Now, I think I told you that up here on top, there is a thermal cutoff switch, and it had tripped, and I got it to come back alive by using a can of compressed air and turning the compressed air can upside down. And if you've ever done that, you know that you get really cold air out of it. And so I literally got this switch back alive again by freezing it enough, and the contacts closed. Okay, now here's where the quandary comes in. I'm gonna put on the tap, I'm gonna put on the tap, I'm gonna put on the meter and see what I got. Okay, I'm not sure at this point what exactly the meter will tell me. If there's any in it at all, then I guess I'm pretty much slated to use R410a. Now, why is it not refrigerating? Because it's probably out of coolant or the compressor's bad. It could be one or the other. The other thing that I learned looking at it is interesting is like in a normal AC system, the coolant comes back in the form of a gas. It gets compressed. This line goes out to a set of coils like outside your house. The fan blows the heat off of this stuff, okay? And then what is what's left after the heat's been pulled out of it, if you will. This line goes on up and goes into a set of cooling coils or evaporator coils. Well, on this thing, you don't see any set of evaporator coils anywhere. So, how is it dumping the heat that's coming? How are you getting those cool coils up in here? Cool. Well, there's actually, if you will, two sets of coils up in here. And this high pressure line goes up, goes into the front set of coils. The air from the fan then blows across them and expels some heat off of the coolant. And what's left over comes out, and it goes through a pressure reduction valve. Basically, the size, the diameter of the piping gets larger, and the pressure is reduced, and the refrigerant can then absorb more heat. So there's two sets of coils up in here. One to expel the heat off of the high pressure line, and a second set of coils, again, after a valve that allows the pressure to drop, it goes through these set of cooling coils, which then forms the cooling fins to evaporate, to collect moisture off of the water or the air that you're feeding through. And water is collected down here, of course, and this low pressure or the suction line then comes back out of the back set of coils, back in the compressor, and you start the whole process over again. But my quandary is, what refrigerant do I use? You do not mix refrigerants. The R410a for cars, I could probably buy a can for $50 and try it to see. Maybe that'll tell me if the compressor works. But it's not a good idea, so I'm kind of in a quandary. The whole thing was $200, $300. Now I'm talking about $150 just to try a can of sealant, refrigerant, and some dye. Dye would let me see a leak, although I don't know what I would do about a leak. And there's always a chance that the compressor is bad, and so I'm wasting $150. I don't know what I'll do. I'm going to put the tap on, I'm going to put the gauge on, I'm going to start it up, and then I'll think about, am I going to go ahead with a repair or not? I currently have the run capacitor not latched in like it should be. Again, I've already changed that. You can see over on the control board there are three relays here, three black boxes. One is obviously for compressor, another one for the fan, and the third one, let's see, what would that be for? Probably the pump. There is a water pump built into this unit that will pump the water out of the containment box underneath of the cooling coils. So I have three relays on the control board down here, and that's what their function is. And you can see some other stuff on the control board, but that's basically it. And I haven't disturbed the control board at all. I don't there's probably a fuse in here somewhere. Um, I don't see it right off, but there must be someone somewhere mounted on the board or somewhere a fuse, as these things tend to use a fuse. Maybe this big guy down here, that may be the fuse right there. I don't know. But nonetheless, they by and large aren't meant to be replaced. I don't think there's any fuse on the outside as I remember anywhere. Um, Underneath the control board here, I don't think I can see anything. Just as the coils, you can sort of see back in here the coils, and there's it's pretty thick. It's like this much of the front is all coils, with again the ones up in the beginning here are dumping heat off of the high pressure line, and then it gets reduced and routed through these backer coils that then chill the air and let the humidity collect out of it down below. I think that's all I have on this particular episode. As I say, what I'm going to do is to mount this. We'll then turn the piercing valve. I will then put on the gauge and see what I got. Obviously, there's always a possibility that this will leak. This comes with these sort of shim pieces to go on like the smaller version pipe, and in this particular case I don't need those. You see it sort of fits snug. There is, wherever it is, right there is a rubber sort of gasket there which will help seal against the tube. And I did read these are not meant, the two halves do not have to go completely together like this. The bolts that came with it, it doesn't have to go completely like that. It's there. It's not, that's not necessary, but I'll tighten it up pretty well. But it does have this gasket here, which will help. But there is a possibility this will leak, you know. It wasn't built into the system, so, and I'll have to clean what's the residual off of here to make sure that it's, and I'll try not to scratch the tube or anything, but clean this tube before I attach it. And then I'll put a gauge on it and see what we got. Again, the R410a, that, and I, nowhere on this particular does it tell me how many ounces or pounds or anything like that that this particular system will hold of refrigerant. I think I'll get maybe a pound in a can, something like that. Hopefully that'll do it enough if I go that way. I have to order it off the internet, of course. R410a is not available locally. R134a for cars is available everywhere, but I have real reluctance to do that. I don't know, it's like a dilemma. I guess depending on the gauge readings, I would be surprised if it has anything in it. You can't really see it over here, but back in here is where this line, the coil set, there's a pinch place back in here, which is what they normally do. They supply it and then they pinch this one line off, and that can leak. I don't see anything bad about any of the coils or the solder joints that were done, but it is always possible to leak there. And the coil set itself up in here, that's usually where leaks develop. But since the unit is inside and the temperature difference between cooling and just ambient is so minimal, the copper shouldn't expand and contract too much. So it really shouldn't be a leak up in the coil set. If anything, it's probably leaked where it was sealed over here at the top. And maybe a can of sealant, that's R410a, with sealant in it and dye in it, and the dye would come out as a red. Any place I could see red, I know it was leaking. If it leaks down on any of these junctions, I'm pretty much screwed. I can't do much on repairing that. So my theory is that it's low in coolant or it's empty. And what I do at that point, probably do 410A at 150 bucks, and you go, why are you putting $150? You're taking a risk and a chance. And you're absolutely right. And but I hate to throw this giant, massive thing away. You know, it's just disturbing to me that it should have come with ports, but it didn't. And R410A is, that's what they used, and it's more expensive than. It's amazing. See, all of this is like 300 bucks, but the refrigerant itself sold separately is 150 bucks. So all this other stuff was 150 bucks. Actually, the whole thing was probably built for what, $150, maybe not that much, and then sold through the chain until finally retail price is 300 or something. Anyway, that's enough for the now. I will put on the port and connect to my gauges and see what I got. Okay, continuation of the Ivation 50 pint dehumidifier with pump repair. And over here I have now installed my port on the low pressure side, and I've also put the run capacitor back in its box. There was a screw down here. There is a screw right there, a small screw. And right here, and it is marked, you can see it, that's the symbol for ground. So these two guys get attached together and connected to this box. I routed the green wire in behind, but I can now see that what it did do is it came out of here, went underneath this piece of plastic and came up and then was attached. It's been a while since I've had it apart, but anyway, I also have put back on the cover over the electrical connections on the compressor. I had taken those off to, there, I got it set down right. I need to tighten it a little more, but to freeze the switch in there to make it open up. And this doesn't have to fit real tight. It's just really electrical protection. Anyway, I've got this port on. Now what I have found is, and I did manage to orient it this way so that I could open up the piercing valve and also connect on my hose gauges right here. What I did learn was that there is no valve right here. You have to have the piercing valve closed, put on your gauge, then open up the piercing valve. This is the only thing, the piercing valve is the only valve that controls whether you got anything coming out of this. When I learned that, I could feel a little bit of refrigerant coming out, not very much. So there's not much in it. I've already determined that, very little in here. But anyway, the point being, on this particular type of port attachment, the piercing valve is the control. There is not another valve right in here anywhere where my fingers are. There isn't any. So you have to use that wrench to open or close. Anytime you're going to connect on a gauge or filling tank or anything, you have to uh, open this up, do your filling, and then close this valve again. I think that's it for right now. I have it back in place. I put this screw back in. I put this screw back in. This holds the pump connection right here. I do have a pump on this one. So the next thing, I'm about to put a gauge on it and see if I have any pressure, and then try to figure out what I want to do. The best way would be to buy the can of R410a with sealer and dye in it and see if that would get it to go. That would be the best solution. Again, I don't know if the compressor is bad. It gets really hot. If the compressor is bad, then it's totally a wasted effort. Or if I have a massive leak someplace, it would be a wasted $150. But that may be the way I go. R410a is not really a good solution. I could squirt a little in perhaps to see if the pressure will come up, and then, if it does, then maybe I could mix in the bulk of it is R410a. That might be an approach. That's even more expensive approach because they got to buy R410a as well as R410a. But anyway, that's where I sit right now. The next thing will be a gauge attachment, and then I'll go from there. Okay, one more thing before I start here. I had to look around and find a hose that has no fill valve or needle valve in the ends, because I don't have any needle valve in the end of this port I added, and there's no needle valve here on the low side port. So I have to use this one to get coolant in. So you will need something like this if you have that sort of port installed. Okay, today I'm gonna try to put a charge in the dehumidifier, and some points I want to point out before. Actually, over here you can see it says R410a, and it takes 13.4 ounces of refrigerant, and the low side pressure is supposed to be 340 psi. That's a lot. So I'm going to try to see if I can do that, but here it does clearly show on this one. I got lucky. Sometimes they might not tell you how much refrigerant goes in or what the low side pressure is supposed to be. On my gauges down here, let's see, the pressure, the pink one, this is in, I think all of these are in Fahrenheit degrees. This is the high side, and I don't have it connected to anything. I did not install a tap on the high side at all. I'm only on the low side, as you can see here, and I think it is saying the pink band is R410a, and it shows a temperature. And I believe I printed it out and brought it down here. I can have it'll show me the conversion of 340 psi to Fahrenheit, and that's what I will attempt to get on the pink scale here, whatever that turns out to be. Also explained that I originally thought I would fill it with R434a, which is cheap, used in automobile air conditionings. Clearly says R410a. I ordered a can of 134, and then I thought about it. No, if I really want to give it a good try, I should do 410. So here's what I did. I've got 1.8 pounds of, this is 410a. It says on here someplace. And it's got a normal seal valve up here at the top for attachment. What I'm going to do is my particular gauge, as you can see, this controls opening up whatever is connected here, or any one of those, in fact, will open up to on that open up this valve to whatever's connected to here. This guy is for a feed, and this is the low pressure side, and this is where I have the blue line connected to the low pressure side on the refrigerant unit. So what I'm going to do is take the one in the middle right here, and I'm going to attach it to the top of the can right there. And on cables, you may or may not know, one end is open, no valve in it, and this one, I don't know if you can see it or not, but see, it does have a needle valve in there like you would find on the tire pressure on your car. And you have to connect the cables properly so that these ends, there's no needle valve in here, and these are just straight open connections, straight opens. So I have a needle valve, let's see, on, actually there's no needle valve required on this one up here, because this controls open and close. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and what I have here, you have to install, turn this upside down, and that's why I have it. It's going to set in this box over here upside down. The cable, the hose will come out, and it'll be like this. This is the feed line, and I'll be using the low side, the blue over here, to allow the 410A to come out of the can and come into the center port and then back out to the compressor. That's the idea. Like I said, you want to check your hoses. They do sell the can with a valve at the top if you want to get that with a short hose, so you don't need this set of gauges. I had them from a previous effort, so I've used them on air conditioning units to recharge or to test things. Anyway, this is like 150 bucks. It's 1.8 pounds, which is what, 24 ounces. So I have almost enough for 2 complete charges. Again, I have another identical unit to this, was shipped to me under warranty, and it's running, or was running, in another room. If I can get this one working, I'd like to use it right here in the man cave I have. So I think that's it from here. I'm going to start the process, and we'll see how it goes. What I'm going to do is to feed in some coolant to start with, and then I'll turn on the unit and get the compressor running. Last time I had it turned on, the compressor would run. There's no pressure shut-off valve on this particular unit. It just has a thermal overload connection at the top. And by the way, there are a ton of various YouTube videos on recharging these sorts of things. I suggest you look at more than one. A lot of times people just put 134A in it, and they say it works fine. I have, you know, I don't know. I don't know enough about the chemistry and the compressors and the oil and all that. I'm just going to try to play it safe with 410A. I have a better shot of it working if I do that. There are a lot of possible sources of failure here. There could be a leak up in the tubing that I cannot seal. This particular, what I bought, has sealant and UV dye. So the sealant will hopefully seal the size of cracks like a human hair, very tiny stuff. And the UV dye could be used to try to see a larger leak. I'm not equipped to be able to repair a larger leak. So there's a possible failure that I have a leak I'll never be able to seal. Here, the compressor may not be, it seems to run, but who knows. The tap I put on here, if it's sealed properly, you know, who knows. There's lots of possibilities of failure here, but hopefully I can get some in it and we'll see how it goes. Okay, I have attached the lower end here with the needle valve. It's now open on this one. It's feeding in the center here. And one thing I forgot to tell you, initially I connected this, but I left it a little loose. And I opened this guy up, and some of the 410A got pushed out here, and the idea was to clear these lines of air. Don't want to put air inside of here, so some shot out of here had a leak here. Now I have used these guys to tighten all of these connections to make sure they're good and tight. I don't want any leaks anywhere. And I have now used my gauge down here, and you can see I have put some 410A in the system. It's now reading some low pressure, and I'm ready to plug it in and turn it on and see if we can get some more 410A in it. Okay, I felt around up on the coils and I can feel some heat at the top, and I can feel some cool, and you see that my pressure is about 120, and Fahrenheit on 410A is about 40 degrees F. It has been running now for a while. The compressor is warm, but not out of bounds, and the liquid side is hot all the way up, which is supposed to be. Again, you take in vapor or gas here. In fact, what I should do is now shut this valve off, since that can, which said it was 1.8 pounds, is empty. I don't know where all that went. I've shut this valve off. Okay. So I can take this guy out because it's empty. Okay, I have finished the recharge and I have it running now. And here is my gauge set. And you can see on the left-hand side, I'm showing about 110 degrees pressure on the outer ring. And it's showing on the pink ring, which is the Fahrenheit for R410A, I'm showing about 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Interestingly enough, this system has been running now for several days, and I had left the can of refrigerant right here, which is R410A. I have left it connected to the to my set here. It comes in the middle. This guy is currently open. So what's happened, it's interesting to me that over a couple days, the pressure in the system apparently has continued to pull vapor and that's what's probably left in that can at this point, vapor out of the can and continue to charge. Now 36 degrees Fahrenheit is not super cold, but if I put my hand up on top, I can feel heat coming out of it, which means that the blower is taking heat out of the high pressure side, and the coils are getting cool because I'm getting water in my bucket up front. Okay, this is where I spliced in. This goes directly to my can of refrigerant. I added this, as I saw in a previous video, and there is in fact water on this at this point. I may have to put some water down here now as well, dripping. I'm going to have to probably put some insulation back around that particular junction that I put on. But anyway, the main thing I'm trying to explain here, and it's interesting to me, you read them upside down, it's 81 degrees in here and it's currently at 32% humidity. Okay, the heat, if I put my hand on this, you can definitely feel heat coming off of it. And that was something I noticed about dehumidifiers when I first got one. It'll heat up the room. Just running all the time, it'll heat up the room. Now I have another one identical to this, setting out in another room, plugged in, and it's pumping out the moisture to a drain, and I just turned it on, and I'm not getting any heat out of the top of it, so it's probably got the same issue as this one. It has a leak, and it has dumped all of its refrigerant. So I might have to do the same thing all over again. Now on this one, you can see, and I have had it on here it's been running for days on and off, and I am up to a certain pressure here. Again, 36 is not real high. I don't know the accuracy of my gauges here. I'm sure that's part of the issue. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to first turn off the dehumidifier. Okay, it's shut down, and you can see that the pressure gauge went up and it's still going. This is the pressure in the vapor side or low pressure side, and it's continuing to climb. Okay, now I think I told you already on this particular unit, it says right here that the low side pressure should be 340 psi. It also says it takes R410a and 13.4 ounces. Okay, two things about that. I bought a can of 24 ounces of R410a. And when I connected it up and started filling up, after a while, and the pressure came up, after a while, I knew I was supposed to shake the can, and because it has sealant in it and so on, that I would, when I picked it up to shake it, it was like empty. And I'm supposed to have 24 ounces, and this thing says I'm only supposed to use 13, so where did the rest of it go? Obviously, it was leaking somewhere, and I ran enough through it that the sealant apparently finally sealed it. Now, whether it'll hold or not is another thing, but I didn't realize. So this gas was being vented, the refrigerant was being vented into this room, and I was breathing it, and I did feel funky, lightheaded, and I wound up opening the door up and blowing a fan and to get some of this the coolant out of the air, and so that's a caution. Obviously, if the system is empty, it's got a leak. I'm attempted to put sealant in it, but I used up 24 ounces to get. Actually, at one time when I first filled it, I had a much higher pressure. Right now, this is saying about 190 psi. It called for what, 320? That one, and that would be when the compressor is not running. That's what that number over there means. When the compressor is not running, you should have, and it's on that outer ring, 320, or what? Yeah, 320, 200. Sorry. 340 psi. That sounds like a whole lot for me. My gauge goes to 300. You see black down here in the black area. It goes from 300 to 500 psi. But that seems like a whole lot, especially if you were to look at the temperature ring, the pink ring there, when the compressor is running, it's about 36 degrees. With that much pressure on the low side, you would think that the temperature on the low side would be up into the 50s or 60s or above that. And that would not be cold enough for any sort of condensation to collect on the coil set. So I'm going to turn it on again. It'll go down to 30%, and now you can see that my the low side pressure with the compressor running is going to come down slowly and should stabilize around 110 psi. Either of my gauges are, I don't have the right gauges, or they're not accurate or whatever. But I know I'm close, and I am getting condensation, and I am getting a bucket full of water. And here's where it's gonna, with the compressor. The compressor also gets warm, but it's not getting hot. Not like it was when I had no refrigerant at all. It does concern me. I'm going to have to deal with this issue over here about the condensation. I'll have to do something about that. And I've got some foam and so on I can put around it. But anyway, I wanted to show you with the gauges attached. And you can see I'm at about, I don't know, 110, 20. But it's showing about 32, 34. 32, 34, 35, 36 degrees is supposedly the temperature of the vapor coming back from the coil set. And I think I explained before, there are two sets of coils up in here. One is on the high pressure line, and the fan blows across it, and it's blowing hot air out here. And in fact, it blows hot air out. It also blows over the low pressure side, if you will, where it's gas, and it takes in heat, the air that's blowing across these coils, expelling hot air up here from the high pressure side, and this air actually is been dehumidified but warmer. Okay. So it is operating. I am getting condensation. It is dehumidifying, and the pressure seems to be more or less stabilized. And it's been, as I said, running for days, and it's about 36 degrees. So this is with the can still connected here. Now I'm gonna, this particular valve, what you do to shut it off, you have to put in the Allen wrench, and I'm going to fully close it, which will take the my coolant can. Okay, what I've done now, over here where the port is, I have closed this, and this only allows gas to come out here. It does not obstruct the flow down this way to the compressor. And I had noticed that when I cut some insulation off here to get my port installed, I was having condensation form here, and I don't want that dripping down in the back, even though it has a little catch span here. You don't want that kind of water dripping. So I have used some what I call foam core. This is used down into like fill cracks and bricks and things like that before you put mortar in, but I had some of it. I've wrapped it around where I cut out the insulation on the low side here and above. I wrapped that around, put this sort of duct tape that I use in the attic on vents and so on. I put that around it, and then I put cable ties on to keep it all in place. And you'll see here that I have put the tool that you need to open this valve up. So if I ever have to go back in here again, I can open up this to put more charge in it. Also, there was a tear in the insulation up here, and I've also wrapped it and cable tied it, because any place that's open. In fact, it appeared to be that there was water had been running down this side, and maybe the leak was right up in there someplace, the refrigerant leak. But anyway, I've also rewrapped this area because the insulation around it had actually just come loose. So I wrapped it and cable tied it, and I have everything should be ready to go back together. And you go, well, I use a lot of cable ties, and I sure do. This tape does hold pretty well. It's the best I've been able to find for stickiness and holding, but I don't trust it over the long haul, and that's why I use cable ties. So this is ready to go back together. I did use R410a. I'm not real happy that I have enough R410a in the system, but it is working. So I'm going to give it a try for a while. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the back on this one and go out and swap. Again, I have another one of these identical units that I got under warranty, and it is now not working either. So I'm probably going to repeat the same thing on that one. And here is one tap I have left. As you'll notice, I never put a tap on the high pressure line. I didn't do that. I was really interested in getting the low pressure to be what it needed to be. And I don't know that I succeeded in that, but it's showing me the temperature of the vapor is like 36 degrees at this point. And that will cause condensation to form on the coils. And the bucket has a lot of water in it, so it's been working. I think that's enough on this one. I'm ready to put the cover on it, and I'm going to swap it with the one which is not working. And I might even go so far to put, because it's raining out today and I'm in here, I might put this tap on, put my gauges on, and see what it reads. It may have some little charge. Again, these things do not have a low pressure switch in them. It turns the compressor off if the refrigerant level gets too low. On major AC systems like your home system, it does have a pressure switch, and then that will shut down the whole system rather than damage the compressor. This does not have that. It has a temperature, high temperature cutoff switch, which is, again, it's kind of like a one-shot. If that trips on you, then you have to use an inverted compressed air can to get it to reset. But that, I did manage to do that. So that's enough on this one. I'm going to button it up and exchange. Okay, I've gotten a cover on the back and had a little difficulty. There is a shelf actually sort of built into this side right here, and it's kind of like a Chinese finger puzzle. You have to make sure everything lines up correctly. And I had an initial problem where this piece was not flush right here, and I couldn't get some of the screws to go in. So it's sort of you got to go slowly on it to get the cover properly back on, and it's got to be flush right here all around. And down here. Again, there is a sort of a rail as part of this outer cover that has to slip over the edge of the bottom of the unit itself. And then I did manage to get all the screws back in. When I was misaligned, I couldn't get these to go and I couldn't get that one to go. So it's all back together. I'm going to empty the bucket and swap it out, but we're good to go, I hope. Okay, Uncle Ron's stuff just finished. How you add a port and charge an Ivation Dehumidifier. Closing thoughts. Some of the YouTube videos that I watched about this, again, they use R410a instead of R410a. I wouldn't do that. Maybe good money after bad. The second point is the Ivation. A lot of videos I saw, much more serious people than me looked at is overall construction. I found it to be lacking. So if you're going to buy one of these Ivation products, and they sell them on Amazon, that's where I got it, make sure you get the extended warranty contract because you may need it. I've had 2 of these now. The second one, the first one I repaired and you've seen it. The second one is now in my workshop for the same sort of treatment. Add a port and recharge. It took 24 ounces to charge the first one. Obviously, it was leaking pretty bad, and whether the sealant will hold it or not, I don't know. But there may be a problem with Ivation in these particular units. This is a 50 pipe height with pump. But if you're going to buy a new one, make sure you get an extended warranty on it. And my impression is they're familiar with this problem and they just ship you a new one. That one goes bad, they ship you a new one. It seemed to have lasted about a year, and then the charge is gone. Anyway, good luck with the attempt to do it. I think I've gotten one operational, and hopefully it'll last more than a year. I do have a port on it now, but I don't know what I would do if it lost its charge again. I could try some sealant in it, but I've already done that. It was in that can of R410a that I used. But anyway, I hate adding to the landfill. Maybe I've just earned good money after bad, but I had to try it. Okay, this is it. I hope you have good luck with it. Uncle Ron's stuff. Bye.